Good evening, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank Father Athanasios and the Parents Group of St. Catherine's for inviting me to share with all of you through the means of the amazing modern technology that we are slowly learning about due to the current pandemic situation. A few thoughts, or as the title describes, spiritual advice on how to deal with the lockdown. It is unfortunate that in the past few weeks in Australia, and especially in our state, in New South Wales, we have seen a devastating outbreak of the pandemic emerging, with many people contracted the virus, and unfortunately counting the first victims who have lost the battle with the disease. It is because of this that many fellow people are experiencing the consequences, such as decline of psychological and mental and physical health, financial issues, loneliness, uncertainty for the future, grief and loss, and the list may go on. It was only a few days before the new outbreak started, during the feast of the Ascension of our Lord to heaven, that we were told, together with the apostles, to stay here until that power comes from on high, which will overshadow and fortify our weaknesses. And although we have already celebrated Pentecost, it seems that our awaiting is continuing and our journey has become static. So tonight, instead of giving an actual spiritual advice, we will attempt, if possible, to ignite our spirits that are suffering because of whatever is going on around us, and hopefully this attempt won't prove too ambitious. Stay here until that power comes from on high, which will overshadow and fortify our weaknesses, said the Lord. And our current awaiting, if we are careful, may become indeed an icon of the journey of our soul to find rest in God's embrace. A window indeed that had to be opened towards heaven long time ago, and God, out of His kindness, says to us, don't look around at whatever is happening currently. You are in danger, if you do that, of sinking. You are in danger of sinking if you lose focus. I am there for you, says the Lord. I was always there. But you have to understand and try and experience my presence in your life, my presence in your lives. We stand in the presence of God during times of sorrow, times of great joy sometimes, and times of trials and temptations, which is something that the whole humanity, the whole world is going through nowadays. So, especially during these times, that we might find ourselves being confined at home due to the following of the necessary government restrictions. We must learn to live in a state of solitude with God in order to experience His presence and love. And someone might ask, does this mean that we are going to isolate ourselves from the others? Obviously, we are isolating ourselves from the others according to the regulations. But does this mean that we are going to isolate ourselves from our family, that we might be spending lockdown together? Of course not. It's just that this personal time with God that most of us were always craving for, and most of us were always complaining that we didn't have, nowadays, without even understanding it or wanting it, if you noticed, is being given to us. So we have to utilize this time. We have to enjoy this quietness, if it exists, obviously, at home, or at least reduce the time that we might be spending on social media or on TV, and instead find some time to think of what? To think of the angels that are surrounding us, to remember the saints, to remind ourselves that we have to imitate their lives. So let us ignite inside us a bit of warmth so that our heart is able to feel God's presence the same way when we light a candle and it creates warmth all around it. Let us practice some form of ascetical struggle, obviously and always according to our strength and according to our spiritual father's blessing and advice. Let us try to fast as much as we can. Let us try and stay awake a bit longer in prayer. Let us read one of the probably untouched new spiritual books that we bought ages ago and were waiting for us to find some time to read them. We should never forget that Christian life is indeed an apostolic life. Elder Emilianos of Simonopetra, of blessed memory, says, to be an apostle means to stand before God and to speak with God. To stand before God, whom we think we see sometimes overwhelming us, and how many times we may ask, why me, God, whenever we are going through something difficult in our lives. Being an apostle means to stand before God, whom we think we see ravishing us, or taking possession of us, or dominating our lives, and yet not to be affected by our old self, which wants most of the times to deny Him. That's why to be an apostle means that I stand in front of God with the boldness of the adoption, and I outpour my inner self, my inner cries, my fears, my anxieties, my insecurities. And I tell him, this is how much I can do. We have to be honest with God. We tell him, I am honest at this moment. This is what I have in mind. I know I have to try more, and I will continue trying. Meanwhile, if you think it is necessary, God, you do with me whatever you will. This is what surrendering to God is all about. Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me, the sinner. Embraced this prayer, which we all know that it is very powerful. Lord, have mercy on me that I may be full of passions. I may be poor, ill, proud. I may be stubborn, full of sins, and yet make me worthy to be accepted by you. I set aside a daily program, a schedule, with the things I have to do, with work or at home, with my family, so that I don't fall into the trap of despondency, which, as we all know, reading the ascetic fathers, the desert fathers, is a trap that most of the times monastics are very easy to fall, but during these times that we are experiencing the difficulties that have come to us due to the pandemic, we have to be careful because despondency is something that might also befallen us. And at the same time, I make sure that I remain on bended knees, physically, if we are able to do so, but most importantly, in spirit. I remain on bended knees so that at any moment I keep vigilance. That's why I remain on bended knees, so that at any moment God can come and raise me up. For God, everything is possible. We remain watchful. And as we have said many times tonight, Christian life, we shouldn't forget, that is an apostolic life. But what does this mean? It means that it's a consciousness that I serve God. If I want to become an apostle of God, I have to be ready to serve Him. Elder Emilianos of Simonopetra used to say, and the more I serve God, or sometimes I think I serve Him, the more I realize that the love I thought I had for Him and for my fellow people isn't sufficient. Our love, if we try and compare it with God's unconditional love, is always not sufficient. My own will is being observed as an insurmountable obstacle sometimes. And God says to you during lockdown, please show your love to your mom and dad. Look at them in the eyes and try to understand them. If you hadn't done this before, at least now God is giving you this opportunity. You have plenty of time to spend with them. God says to you, your mom needs you. Your mom needs you to give her a break or a hand with the household. when everyone is at home and the whole situation has become too much for her. God says, your dad needs your company because he has been lonely at home, as he is not used to being away from work for that long. Your sister needs motivation with her studies. Your grandmother is upset and worried because she cannot go to church, and she is waiting for a word of reassurance. A word of reassurance that God is not absent, God is present, even if the majority of the faithful nowadays, and hopefully not for long, cannot attend the church services. And that for the people who are close to God, and we should never forget this, the divine liturgy does not end, neither is exhausted upon the final prayer that we say, the Ευχών των Αγίων Πατέρων ημών, which is the final prayer of the divine liturgy through the praise of our Holy Fathers. Lord Jesus Christ, our God, have mercy on us and save us. The divine liturgy does not end there, but the divine liturgy is considered an unceasing experience of the presence of God in every aspect of our life. And here I just wanted to say a beautiful small story that I found from one of the books of Elder Ieronymos. And he talks about someone who had gone to find God in the church. Obviously, he was going through a lot, and he visited one of the churches near him. And with great zeal, the story says, and bended knees, he was praying. He was in need, obviously. That's why he was at the church. He didn't feel any peace while he was praying. He couldn't understand anything. And then he realized that probably he was not getting anywhere, and he decided to return back to his home. And when he returned back, and especially during the night, something amazing happened. Suddenly, without expecting it, a divine light appeared, the uncreated light. And then everything changed. He was transformed. He was enlightened. He rejoiced. He was celebrating. He understood the presence of God to the point that he had forgotten all the things that he wanted to ask from God when he was at the church. Why? Because indeed everything had changed inside him. Everything had become a divine presence. And I wanted to share this story with you because, and I'm not saying that we do not need to go to church. Obviously, the church services and us participating in the sacraments of the church is something which is fundamental in our faith. But I just wanted to point out this to you, for us to understand that even during these times, that most of you, unfortunately, cannot be present physically at the church, we should know that God never abandons us. And the grace of the sacraments, the grace of the services, of the prayers that we as clergy or monastics continue praying, are always there for all of you. Stay here, the Lord said to the apostles and to all of us, until that power comes from on high, which will overshadow and fortify your weakness. God's grace that can fortify our weaknesses and our human nature, which might be occupied with all the current issues. And don't get me wrong, we should pray, and we can pray, and we have to pray, so that God may protect our fellow people, the whole world, and spare His people from the pandemic. We ought to do this. But at the same time, our hearts should be concerned. We should never forget this. Our hearts should be concerned also about our spiritual future, which is our salvation. Our souls should be longing their bridegroom, Christ Himself. And we have to stay here during these difficult times, patiently, so that through the overshadowing of grace, I may be able to empty myself in order to put on God, just as God emptied Himself to put on man. During these difficult times, we owe to God. We owe to His unconditional love and to His ultimate sacrifice. Out of Philotimo, as St. Paisius used to say, to be there for our fellow people, the people who are in need. As our beloved Archbishop says, we have a duty not to leave anyone alone in this crisis, but to face and overcome it with a spirit of solidarity and unity, by providing for the others in every possible way. The same way Saint Ieronymos of Simonopetra, my patron saint, used to do while he was in the dependency of the monastery of Simonopetra in Athens. And his biography says that he used to give away everything that the dependency owned. And we shouldn't forget that Saint Ieronymos lived in Athens at times that they were also very difficult, during the Second World War and after and before the Second World War. He used to give away blankets, mattresses, everything. And the dependency sometimes was ending up being empty. And when the fathers from Simonopetra were visiting Athens for medical issues or for matters that they had to do with the monastery, sometimes had nowhere to sleep. And he used to put them down on the floor. And there is this beautiful story that one of the old fathers of Simonopetra, a very holy person as well, Elder Gelasius of blessed memory, he used to say to Saint Ieronymos, Father Ieronymos, keep also something for us, so that when we come to Athens, we have somewhere at least to sleep and have some rest. And Saint Ieronymos used to look at him and used to say to him, Elder Gelasi, you have to be careful not to be attached with the worldly things too much, because you might lose paradise. Like Elder Emilianos of blessed memory, who always wanted to give something to the people he was visiting. And if he had nothing, he would empty the library of the dependency in Athens, or the kitchen shelves, or the fridge, with the sweets that they used to bring them when they used to go and see him, so that he doesn't go somewhere empty-handed. And he used to say, you should give away things. This is what brings happiness, not to receive and collect things. And St. Paisius as well used to say this, you find happiness, give away whatever you have, whatever you can do, and you will see that if you do this, happiness comes to you. During these difficult times, we also have to try and learn humility. We should learn how to ask for help and accept help, because by doing this, we give the opportunity to our fellow people that have the means to do so, to do something for us, for their fellow people, and do something also for their souls, for their own salvation. There is a story from the Desert Fathers, if I remember correctly, from the life of St. Arsenios the Great, who is indeed a giant amongst the Desert Fathers, that he was once sick, ill. St. Arsenios, before becoming a monk, had a very high position in the Byzantine Empire, and afterwards he decided and he gave up everything and went to the desert to become a monk. And once he got sick, ill, and the fathers there tried to do everything they could to help him. And I think they cooked for him, but because they were in the desert, they were in need of what? Something which seems so simple for us. They were in need of a lemon. So they would just, put a bit of juice in the food that they cooked for St. Arsenios. And the fathers, the story says, the life says, that they went all the way down to the city, the nearest city, if I remember correctly, Alexandria, just to go and bring for him a lemon. And St. Arsenios accepted that. Although he was a great saint, and he was an example of humility and of a lot of monastic virtues, he accepted that. Why did he accept that? Because in this way, his brothers, his fellow ascetics, they were given the opportunity to do something for him, to show to him their love and their respect. We have to have the humility to confess that God exists, that He is present even during times of tribulation. And I'm saying that, and it might not make that much sense, but the reason why I'm saying that is because we have to confess God's presence not only when everything goes well around us, not only when we are happy or we are rejoicing, because there are a lot of times that we catch ourselves praising God, glorifying God, sometimes even uttering small sermons to the people around us and explaining to them how great God is. And then, when something happens, all of a sudden we change. We cannot talk about God because sometimes we think that He has abandoned us. So it is humble. It takes a lot of humility and acceptance to to say to someone that although I'm going through something which is very difficult for me now, I know, I believe, and I confess, and I will spread this message to everyone around me that God is there, even though we think He is not. It is through the example of our humility and patience that we will help our children to have courage and not to be afraid. I think we all have to accept that the times that we are going through, they have no precedence, and especially younger people, I think they are always tempted, especially during lockdown or when their studies probably are postponed, or you have to change the way you used to do things up until now with your studies, with work, our personal lives. I think there is always this trap of falling into the temptation, especially the younger people, of thinking what's going to happen in the future. Is this going how it's going to be from now on? So we owe this to our children, to the people around us, to the younger generations, to teach them how to be courageous, not to be afraid. Humanity went through similar situations, obviously years ago, a lot of times. We have to teach them to have courage, to be strong, but most importantly, to put their trust to God. Nowadays, our society has taught us to put our trust to everything else but from God. But see what happens when difficult times come, and all of a sudden we think that we are losing all these things that we always thought that they would be there for us. Then to whom else we are going to put our trust apart from God? It is up to us to make our home God's dwelling, a place of happiness and rejoicing. We have the opportunity to use the time at home wisely, to spend quality time with our children, with our family members, to talk to them about God, so that their little eyes will be filled with love and compassion for the others. These attributes, these characteristics of our character are implanted from a very young age. It is up to the husband, who might have to stay at home, to show his love towards his wife, and the wife to her husband, so that their relationship, their bond becomes stronger. And just with concluding with some final remarks, during the lockdown and during these moments, we have to strive and try to do, well, everything we said before, but we have to try and imitate the apostles. I should repeat myself. Christian life is an apostolic life, in our own way. But remember what the apostles used to do before meeting the Lord? They were peasants. They were people that they were just trying to make a living. They were fishers, and every time they would go and toil, sometimes during the night or during the day, they were not sure if they would return back home with catching something to provide for their families. And yet they continued their struggle. But now, do you remember what happened? They were casting their nets, but their hearts were looking for something deeper. So at the end, what is this that they caught? They caught Christ Himself in their nets. This is without even them realizing what was going on in their lives, that their lives, they were going to change forever. We also have to throw our fishing nets in order to catch Christ Himself, who is so kind and is hiding behind our difficulties. Yes, indeed, He is hiding behind our difficulties. We do not see Him. We do not see Him, and we think that He does not exist or that He is absent. And yet we don't realize that if we are not able to see Him, this is only because of His kindness, because He does not want to impose Himself to us. And then things are allowed to happen in our lives, as is the case with this pandemic. And Christ is hiding. Why? Because He is expecting us to call for Him. And while we are casting our nets, our fishing nets, and while we are at home, with all the difficulties that this comes with, we should never stop invoking the Lord. Ask, as we said, for the power from on high, for His grace to come down on us. We should never stop invoking Him and saying to Him, "Come and dwell in our souls." We have to do that. We have to ask Him to come and dwell in our souls. Come and dwell in our souls, you God, that we know that love mankind. You that have become for us. Do you remember this beautiful homily of St. John the Chrysostom, that he is describing the amazing love that Christ has for us? And in Greek it is called Εγώ για σένα Χριστός. I have become for you everything. What is this that our bridegroom has become for us? As St. John Chrysostom beautifully says, he has become, and we have to allow him to become for us our home, our dwelling, our father, our brother, our bridegroom, our clothing, our foundation, everything we need. This is what Christ says in this beautiful homily. It's as if Christ is talking to us and he says, I have become everything for you so that you feel that you are in need of anything. I have become your servant. I have become your friend. And then if we endure. And then, as we said at the subtitle of today's talk, remember we said, Christ said to his disciples, stay here and be patient. It will pass for us. Stay here and be patient, because my grace is going to come on you. And then you will understand that your weaknesses are not going to be there anymore. So, if we endure, which I understand, it is not easy at times, but if we endure, then what is this that Christ is going to tell us? Well done, my faithful servant, you have waited patiently. And he will say to us, remember what the Revelation says towards the end. Yes, I am coming quickly. The Lord is coming quickly. That's why we shouldn't lose focus, even though we are going through whatever we are going through. And then, what is this that we are going to reply to him? Amen. Come, Lord Jesus. And if we do this, then the lockdown or whatever other restrictions we have to go through, the turmoil, the loss, the grief, other issues that we might be going through, for us, that we shouldn't lose focus, and we have to know that our God is our only focus, then the lockdown and everything else, what is it going to become for us? Surprisingly, it may become for us a revelation. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Yeroda, for the very inspirational and very wise presentation you gave to us today. It's obviously there are many times, during this lockdown that we lose focus, we lose courage, we become despondent. All these weaknesses that you spoke about during your presentation. Thank you very much. So what we'll do is, that's okay. Dora, did you want me to say, if anyone has any questions, instead of getting you to speak, because we have over 218 people present today, if you have any questions, we have the chat signal at the bottom. I kindly request that your questions are placed in there. I kindly request that your questions are obviously relating to today's topic, and we keep it that way. Questions have to be questions, not statements. So fire away, and Dora and Gia will have a look at them, and maybe we can get Dora to read out the questions, and Abbot Ieronymos will be answering the questions. I think we'll allow probably 6 or 7 questions.
Yes, of course, yes. And I will obviously need your help, Father, in answering them.
Εντάξει. Father Peter, did you want to say something as well?
And also Father Prochoros, of course, yes.
Father Prochoros,
that we are honored to have him with us tonight.
Father George as well from Bradford, from Melbourne.
And Father George, yes.
Yes. I think before we start receiving the questions, I think, Father, I just wanted to ask. Obviously, not just as a priest, but as a parent, as an individual. How do we shake off that sometimes that despondency that we have? Because we hear so many times people say to us, "Look, I don't go to church during the lockdown, so I don't need to fast, I don't need to pray," where we become very spiritually lazy. From your experience, how can we shake that off?
Yes. I think I probably made a point at some point saying that we have to set a program, a schedule, a daily schedule that we have to try and keep it as much as possible. And I think also this is one of the solutions and the ways that we can battle despondency. This is what also the fathers and the monastics on Mount Athos sometimes they suggest, so that we don't fall into this mood of feeling that we are tired or we can't do anything, or we just feel that we have to go and sleep and rest. It is good if in our everyday program we have things set there that we know that we have to do. And unless something urgent happens, I would encourage everyone, and sometimes I'm also trying to do this for myself, to follow this schedule. And at the beginning, for some people this might be hard, that they are not used to having a schedule, something set, that they know what they are going to do next, in the next half an hour, in the next hour. But I think if you persevere with this and you persist, then this becomes part of your life. And especially with our prayer rule, our daily prayers. As you mentioned, Father, and it's a very good point, now most of our parishioners and the people we know, the faithful, they cannot go to church. So on a Sunday, it is very easy for them, to sleep in, because they can't go to church anyway. So, but our modern technology has the means for us to view services now, through the live streaming and so many other ways. So, in this, what is this that we have to do, or the people that they have to do? I would advise them, to wake up in the morning on a Sunday, do their prayers, their daily prayers, if they are doing some prayers before going to church, get dressed with their clothes that they would wear if they were to go to church, prepare themselves and their children, and stay attentively and follow the service as if they were at church. Obviously, at home there are many distractions. It's easier for us to lose focus. But if you think about it, even at church, sometimes, are we always focused? Even as clergy, sometimes we catch ourselves losing focus and thinking sometimes so many other things of what we have to be focusing at the moment. So, setting aside a program, a schedule, and trying not to omit our prayers. I think it is very important. So act as if everything is smooth and normal, as if life goes on without thinking that outside of our house, I know that this is very hard, without thinking that there is a lockdown. We have to do this, otherwise everything around us becomes a distraction that can make us lose focus. I don't know what you think of the other people that they are attending, or the fathers that they are also attending and are following. At least this is what I think, and I have found personally that the days that I have a schedule and a set program of the things that I have to do, it does not matter if I only get to do 5 of the 10 things that I have to do. It doesn't matter, but I know what I'm doing, and the 5 things that I was not able to do today, I will do them tomorrow, so that the schedule continues every day.
We have a couple of questions, Yaroga, in the chat. This one from Catherine from Melbourne. Father, your blessings. It is a bit easier for us as adults to understand these concepts of patience and struggle. How do we frame this and the things you have mentioned in your talk tonight for teenagers and younger children?
Yes. This is a very good question, but it's not an easy one to answer. Well, it is not easy. And I think also it depends on the character of each child and each teenager. But generally speaking, it is hard, obviously, to teach young children and teenagers patience, or tell them just everything is going to be okay, when, as we said before, they have learned in their lives for everything to be set, everything to be organized, planned ahead from months before, and knowing what they are going to do, the studies that they're going to follow, the postgraduate studies, the PhD, holidays, gap year, and everything else. And then all of a sudden something like this happens, and we think that we lose our ground under our feet. And then how do you explain this? What do you say to them? That God has allowed something for all of us to go through, and our lives, they have turned upside down. As I said, it's not an easy task. But I would say, let us not think that much of what the children or the teenagers think. We have to take into account whatever they think and their struggles. But in this, I think we have to try and be for them an example. That's why I mentioned earlier that we are the ones that we have to teach them how they should behave. So if young children and teenagers see us enduring whatever we are going through patiently, then they will remember this. And maybe during these times they might not be able to comprehend this or put this into action, but later on in their lives, they will always remember. And believe me, they do remember. We do remember things from back home when we were growing older. We do remember if our parents, they were stressed, if they were crying, if they were impatient, if they were anxious about something. And then do you remember what was happening? Afterwards, this anxiety was transmitted to us. So we have to try and become the examples for them, enduring whatever we are going through patiently, have put our trust to God. And how do we explain this to them? Put our trust to God by just sitting down to them and going through with them all the time and saying to them, trust to God, trust to God. You can say this once, twice, 3 times, but how can someone understand that? We have to show to them that we do put our trust to God. What does this mean? Even if we have to stay at home for the next 5 weeks, when they come to us and they complain, even though inside us we might be going through difficulties, at least we have to tell them, look, it is not easy for me as well, but I am trying. I have to be strong for you, for me, for our family. I'm enduring. There is no other way out. We have to be together. We have to stay united. And this is another thing that we have to try and achieve during these difficult times. Unity, solidarity, as Archbishop said. We have to be very, very, very careful with this, because the tempter is always trying to divide us. And we have to be careful that this pandemic does not become a reason that families may become divided. They may become divided from different opinions. They may become divided because they cannot endure this with patience. They may become divided because they cannot stand each other. But if the husband and wife do not try their best to endure such a difficult time, then what is this example that they will show to their children? To their children, that once they grow older, they will also want to get married. They will have to remember from their mom and dad an example of unity, solidarity, love, endurance, acceptance, supporting each other. I think that the example from the parents on its own, without saying too many things, but just presenting ourselves in such a way that we instill in them what? Security. We have to try not to instill into them anxiety. We have to try and not to instill to them a depressive mood. And as I said, even if inside us we are going through something hard and it is unbearable for us, for our children, we have to be honest, but at the same time, we have to appear strong, so that they have somewhere to grab from when they are not making it. Because if we don't appear strong, if we don't appear faithful, if we don't appear that we have hope, then what is the example that we are going to give to our children and our teenagers? Yes. And forgive me for saying that. I do not want to judge anyone. I know that it is very hard. And raising children, especially during these times. But God does everything, as we said. God is not absent. God is present. It's just that we have to call for Him, to call for His help, and show to our children that He is there, so that they are able to experience His presence with all the things that we said in the talk.
Our next question, Yeroda, is from Evan and Tammy. They ask, in terms of never stopping with involving Christ in our life, how do we deal with people who we interact with daily in our lives who may have other views?
They may have other views in regards to the faith or to God, or just generally?
I believe it might be faith.
Faith, yes.
And their belief in faith.
Yeah, it's the faith, Father.
It's the faith, yes. Well, I think this is also a very good question, but I think we will all agree that this is an issue that all of us probably have gone through, or we are going through, not only during these times. During our lifetime, we always are in a position to mingle and spend time with people that they might have a different view about God. Yes, and what I would say on this, and I know that our interaction with people that they might have different beliefs, and we are okay with this. Like we have to accept that not everyone may have the same beliefs with us, and we have to respect that. Okay, we know that we know that we have the truth, but at the same time we are not perfect as individuals, and but we have to respect the other people's beliefs. Now, it is obvious that during these times, our interaction with people that they have different beliefs might be becoming a bit harder, because there might be people, for example, saying, "And where is God now? And what is He doing for us? He's not doing anything. He's not helping His people. If He was Almighty, that the people to say, the believers, then He would have intervened immediately, and the pandemic would have ended." And many other things that they might be saying, and we respect that. We don't agree, but we respect that. The same way they also have to respect our point of view. Now, on this, I will repeat myself, sorry for another time as well tonight. Our Christian life is an apostolic life. So what does this mean? We have to preach to others about God in our own way. And that's why I think I read somewhere, I listened to a talk once, I can't remember, that it was saying how if we were to be true Christians and perfect in a way, in our faith, in practicing our faith, and showing love and respect to each other, and becoming the example for the rest of the people, then probably most of the people around us or on earth would have converted and would have become Christians. Because people, they would see us and they would say, "I'm not sure what these people believe. I can always find out about this, but these people are different." Like these people, the same way the idolaters back in the ancient times, at the first centuries of our church, the Christians were being persecuted, but there were people that their hearts, they were open, and they would see that these Christians that no one knew about them up until then, they were different. They wouldn't react. They wouldn't respond back. They would be humble. They would accept their belongings to be taken away so that they don't lose their faith and so that they confess their God. So, if we were to be as we should be, then a lot of people around us would have converted, I believe. So there is a lot of space for improvement, I believe, in all of us. So, going back to your question, when we are in situations that we interact with people that they might have a different belief with us, it is okay for us, I believe, and please, fathers, correct me if I'm wrong, to tell them our opinion. Also, talk to them about our faith, our beliefs. And then you see that if the people that we interact, they want also to make their own point and share with you their own views, well, they can do that. But we have to be careful because there is a certain moment during such conversations that most of the times you feel inside you agitation, anxiety, or anger sometimes when these interactions happen. I'm not saying that this happens all the time, but sometimes it does happen. So, if you feel like this, you have to say to yourself inside you, this is the time for me to stop the conversation in a very polite and kind way. Wish them all the best, okay? Pray for them, and then teach them and make your faith known to them, not that much by your words, but by your example. And we can never impose our faith and our beliefs to other people that they are not ready sometimes to accept this. So we allow them, like maybe because they need time. And obviously we cannot accept them, like to say things against our faith, against our God. That's why there are times that, like we say to them, excuse me now, I don't think that this conversation is going to go anywhere. But we are trying not to have any negative thoughts against them. And we have to be very careful with this, not only with the people that they have different beliefs from us. We have to be very careful, especially during these times, with the people around us. Because the people around us can understand if inside us we have negative thoughts for them. Especially if you spend most of your day at home, bumping each other, and always, like having each other next to you. Like, we have to be very, very careful. And during these times, that's why our patience and our humility is being tested. We never accept any negative thought against other people, and we continue with our lives and teach them by our example.
Thank you very much, Father.
Thank you, Father. Thank you. We have a little bit of time for 2 more questions. This question is from Ageliki. So it's open to all the fathers online. So your blessing fathers, what are your top tips to keep being positive during COVID lockdown?
Well, maybe allow me so that I also will give the fathers also, because I think I talked too much tonight. And I can also add a few things at the end. Maybe we can ask the fathers to answer this.
We want to hear you.
Me? Well, basically, whatever we said up until now. But positivity, it's what we said before, with our thoughts. I think one way to do this is to be watchful. Because our thoughts, they do determine our lives. I'm sure that we will all agree on this, especially during these difficult times that we are going through. Now tell me if there is one person amongst our 200 and how many we are today, that we wake up in the morning and we don't think what's going to happen in the next week or two. What does this mean? That we do find ourselves being anxious and worried. And these anxieties and this worrying stems from where? From thoughts, Yes, most of the times. So, one of the things that we have to try and do, not only now, but during our lifetime, is what the fathers talk about when they say, they mention nipsi, watchfulness. And this is not a task only for the monastics. This is a task for all of us, for every Christian. Nipsis, meaning that we are trying to reject, not fight, not open a discussion, a dialogue, but just reject, ignore any thoughts that come to you, and they come to you for which reason? It's obvious. If you sit down and think about it, analyze it, which the fathers, they don't suggest us to do that, because if we analyze it, we fall into the trap. But if you think about it, pay attention, and you will see that most of the times the thoughts, they are there to make us lose our positivity, to disturb our pace, to take away from us our happiness, our joy. And most of the times the thoughts, they have to do with things in the past or the things in the future. And something that Elder Emilianos Simonopetra used to say, and it is true, never rely on the thoughts. They never say the truth, believe me. They never say the truth. Even if they sound, or you think that they are positive, if you accept them, it's oxymoron, but a positive thought, if you accept it, then it is very easy to turn into a negative thought, and you will find yourself losing your positivity because you have accepted a positive thought. It happens, but so we reject our thoughts, we try and pray, we say that Jesus prayed according to the blessing we have from our spiritual fathers. And on this, just allow me to just give you a small tip. Watchfulness, it is not something that you can practice for 24 hours 7. This is something for the advanced, for the people that they, they have tried a lot into practicing watchfulness. It can happen, you can achieve such a state. But in order for someone to achieve this, you have to start small. What does this mean? This is what Saint Ephraim from Katounakis used to say, and he used to say to a very spiritual professor that they were friends. And once this professor went to talk to him and find him and said to him, Ieroda, you are here, you have no distractions, you are at peace, everything sort of is helping you to stay focused in Katounakis. And Saint Ephraim said to him, well, my professor, when you wake up in the morning, no paraphrasing because I can't remember exactly what he said, like the meaning, but is this, like when you wake up in the morning, from the time you wake up until the time you go and brush your teeth, can you remember to say the Jesus prayer a few times? And then from the moment you put on your clothes and you have your breakfast, can you also remember to say the Jesus prayer a few times? And then he asks him, how do you go to the university? Do you take the transportation, the bus? Well, from the moment you enter the bus up until the moment you are about to step down and go to the university, can you also remember the Jesus prayer? And then basically he offered to him all these small tips, small goals for 5 minutes, 1 minute, 10 minutes. And he said to him, well, if you do this, then you will be praying more than me here in the desert. So small goals so that we can make sure that the thoughts that they are coming, and they are a lot, especially nowadays, to reject them. And slowly, we get used to not allowing the thoughts to tempt us. And another thing, and we should be careful, that most of us are doing with thoughts. We should never generalize things. We should never make any connection. Meaning, Like, I don't know, like for example, you wake up in the morning and like you feel stressed, anxious, or because you have found out that your lectures at the university have been postponed. Like I'm just giving you a simple example. And then, if you accept this thought, and the thought might tell you, oh, like if you're going to be like this every day, and if your studies are going to be postponed all the time, when are you going to finish? How are you going to make it? How are you going to progress? What's the future ahead of you? Well, have you noticed that if we accept this thought is attempting to generalize a situation and to make connection with your future. So, because one day you woke up and you were not feeling well, for whatever reason, maybe you slept late, maybe the weather, or you had a headache. We all go through, not every day is the same, we all go through these moments. This does not mean that every day, for the rest of your life, or up until you go back to embark back on your lectures, or up until you finish your university, or up until you get married, that every day, every single day of your life, you will be waking up feeling like this. Do you understand this? I don't know if I make sense. So we have to be careful because thoughts, this is what they are always trying to do. Make false connections about things that might never happen, and yet if you accept the possibility that they will happen, what is this that they can create on you? Anxiety, stress, depression, and afterwards the easiest thing for you to do is to give up. Meaning and afterwards you say, oh, am I going, to make it? You will make it. Of course, we should be very careful not to fall into despair, as Father Athanasius said, and despondency during these times. No, every day we wake up in the morning, even if the day is upside down, we should say to ourselves, it will be okay. Because today I'm not well, this does not mean that tomorrow I'm going to be the same. And if I wake up next day and I am the same, still I shouldn't give up. And I will say to myself, whatever God wants. If God wants me for a few days to take a break and relax and reassess a few things in my life, this might not be a disaster, but it might be a blessing for me. Well, one of the things that we can do on being positive, but also being positive as well. I always back to the era before the pandemic, because we have to pay attention to this. It is not something that, all of a sudden, you cannot be positive now if you haven't practiced positivity up until now. But are our times and the times that we're going through can they inspire us, inspire in ourselves positivity? No, not at all. Actually, it's the opposite. The times we're going through, the only thing that they can suggest to us is negativity. So, positivity, I think, personally, is a work in progress. You try every day to be positive, even if you cannot be positive. And sometimes you just impose on yourself positivity. You try and control your emotions and your feelings as much as you can. You find ways to become positive. And even if this means that, one day you just have a break. Or, one day you go and you read a nice spiritual book, or you listen to a beautiful hymn, or even, a good song. Or you spend some time, some quality time with the people around you, so that you always try and be positive. But it is not something, an easy recipe that you say that today I have to be positive and I will be positive. You have to try hard in order to stay positive. Yes, and we have to be careful. I repeat myself, but it is very important. We have to be careful with our thoughts. Yes, it's our thoughts that they make us feel positive or negative. Most of the times. Most of the times. And if I can add one more thing, with being positive, see, sometimes there are events that happen in our lives that we cannot control. It's beyond our control. I think we will all agree on this. We have passed through moments in our lives that God allowed things to happen for a reason, and the only thing we could do is just stay on the side and just, wait and see a few things being unfolded. Obviously with prayer and not losing faith and hope. But during these moments, we should be strong as much as we can. But it is not the important part. It is not only during the moments that something like bad happens or that you have to be strong. I personally believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm open to this, that the crucial moment is how we get out of this. That's why I said there are things that we cannot control. But eventually, these things or these events, at a certain point, they come to an end. Okay? So, we have to be careful when these events come to an end, how not to lose hope and try and save whatever we can save. Go behind. Look back. And this might be painful and heart-aching, but push yourself and go and collect the pieces. There will always be pieces there, lying around. And if you put yourself into this, then I'm telling you, most of the times, out of these broken pieces, something new may start. I don't know if the fathers also, Father Prochorus and Father George, if you want to add anything onto this.
If the fathers have anything to add to that question, please feel free to add to the question. If not, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us tonight. Thank you very much, Yeroda, for your time and again for sharing in your wisdom with us and your very inspirational words, particularly towards the end, on our thoughts and how to remain positive. So thank you very much for that.
You're welcome. It was nice to share with everyone, our thoughts, as we said, our anxieties, the unknown of the future. But as we said many times, these times we can grow spiritually, and also we can increase our unity, our solidarity, the love and the respect we have for each other, although we are not able to see each other in person. But this does not mean that we do not think of each other. We do pray for each other, and let us hope and pray to God that whatever we are going through will come to an end.